It was perhaps the most gruesome crime scene Lin Feng had witnessed since joining the police force. A man was stuffed inside a tiny infant's crib, his body contorted into a grotesque and unnatural posture. Right over his heart was a deep, hollow cavity, the surrounding skin blackened. The heart itself had long since vanished. Anyone who saw it would wince and cover their nose, as a sickeningly foul stench radiated from the victim. Wearing gloves, Captain Lin Feng gently adjusted the dead man's head. The victim's head slumped. His eyes were widened to their absolute limits, as if he had witnessed something utterly terrifying in his final moments. He frowned, glancing at his subordinate Chen Yan, who was taking a statement from the person who first discovered the scene. Chen Yan had been with the squad for over 2 years and was already considered a seasoned detective. Though only 28, he had built a solid track record. Lin Feng waved him over. Handing his notepad to a nearby officer, Chen Yan jogged over to his captain. "Any findings, boss?" Lin Feng pointed at the victim. "It is him. We just saw him last week." Looking down, Chen Yan immediately pointed a finger at the body in shock. "It really is him. That guy who refused to take his sick mother to the doctor, leaving her to die at home." The victim's name was Yang Sheng. Just a week prior, neighbors had called the police, reporting a rotting stench coming from his apartment that had made the entire building uninhabitable. When police arrived, they found his mother had been dead for days. According to neighbors, Yang Sheng had always lived off his mother, taking her entire pension to pay off his gambling debts. They reported that he only fed her 1 meal a day. By the time she was discovered, the elderly woman was emaciated, reduced to little more than skin and bones. "Talk about karma," Chen Yan muttered with a curse. Lin Feng said nothing, turning his attention to forensic medical examiner Xiao Lu, who was examining the body. Roughly the same age as Chen Yan, Xiao Lu was already a highly capable forensic pathologist who had helped Lin Feng's team crack numerous cases. Frowning, it took her about 20 minutes before she finally stood up. "Captain Lin, the victim's limbs have all been fractured and snapped to a certain degree, likely caused by being forcefully stuffed into the crib. Aside from the massive cavity where the heart used to be, there are no other fatal wounds. But since the heart has been extracted, I can't determine the exact cause of death just yet." She noted, however, that before dying, the victim had lost control of his bowels and bladder. Furthermore, his unnaturally dilated pupils strongly suggested he had been literally scared to death. Examining the chest wound, Xiao Lu deduced that the heart was likely removed post-mortem. The tool used appeared to be a long-handled shears, or the type of serrated knife typically found in Western steakhouses. All eyes turned back to the victim. The inhumane torture this man had endured before his death was truly unimaginable. "Captain, we have something over here," a police officer called out from a distance. Lin Feng and Chen Yan rushed over to investigate. Suspended in midair was a dark, purplish-red heart swaying gently with the passing breeze. Chen Yan had never seen anything so visceral. Unable to hold it in, he clamped a hand over his mouth and ran off to vomit. The other officers reacted similarly, leaving only Lin Feng to reach out and touch the organ. Directly beneath the suspended heart lay a computer-printed note resting on the ground. It contained only one line: "Return to the original kindness of your first breath." It is often said that mankind is inherently good at birth. Yet, reading these words, Lin Feng sensed a profound, desolate sorrow. Xiao Lu hurried over, carefully cutting the string. Cupping the heart in both hands, her expression was grim. "Captain Lin, I need to take this back to the lab for a detailed examination before I can issue a report." Lin Feng nodded slightly, then resumed, pacing the crime scene, circling it again and again. Having composed himself, Chen Yan returned, letting out a breath of relief to see that both the body and the heart had been removed. Lin Feng looked at him, amused. "Feeling better? If you are better, let us get started." Chen Yan nodded, putting on a serious face. Hearing this exchange, the other officers quietly took a step back. It was not every day one got to witness Lin Feng's seemingly miraculous profiling methods in action. To see it even once made being a police officer worthwhile. Lin Feng knew, however, that this was simply applied behavioral science, blended with psychological deduction, behavioral analysis, and trace evidence examination. Ultimately, it was the result of a love for reading, attending lectures, and connecting theory with reality. But to others, his spotless record, 8 years without a single wrongful conviction or a criminal slipping through the cracks, gave him an almost mythical status. He walked to the doorway, entering through the west entrance. His movements slowed, like an actor immersing himself in a role. Letting his arms hang loose, his gaze grew quiet yet razor-sharp. He let out a dark, mocking laugh, the corners of his mouth stretching into an exaggerated curve. Ha ha ha. He is a man who deserves to die. He starved his own mother to death, ignored her illness, and went out drinking, whoring, and gambling. He even used the media to twist the truth, claiming she did not care about him. I must make him revert, return to his original form, kind and pure. And so, I will turn him into a newborn infant. I will take his heart and wash away his filth. Lin Feng's performance was so intense that the surrounding officers felt the pressure, barely daring to breathe. He walked over to the crib, gently stroking the wood, then moved to a nearby table, mimicking a series of actions. According to preliminary assessments by the trace evidence team, the table showed marks of a laptop having been placed there. There were no footprints, but a long, dragging blood trail marked the floor. Stepping out of character, Lin Feng returned to the west entrance, pantomiming hanging the heart, then looked down at his feet. Right where he stood was a pool of blood. He snapped his head back, walking to the center of the room where the body had been found, then back to where the heart had hung. Suddenly, he shook his head in confusion. Chen Yan had been recording Lin Feng's movements on his phone and immediately spotted the discrepancy. This was not where the killer gutted the victim, Chen Yan noted. It is highly likely that after entering through the west door, the killer hung the heart first before stuffing the body into the crib, Lin Feng said. Send someone to search the west exit for the murder weapon. Chen Yan nodded and immediately led a team outside. Lin Feng then looked toward the east door, the entrance the police had used upon receiving the call. This location was an abandoned theater. Of its 4 exits, 2 were blocked by debris. Of the remaining 2, the east door faced the main road, while the west door opened toward a secluded mountain behind the building. Clearly, the killer had entered from the mountain path. The fact that there was only a drag mark on the floor suggested the killer wore protective shoe covers to conceal footprints. Furthermore, the perpetrator was intimately familiar with the layout. Every step had been calculated. How to enter, how to process the heart, leaving the note, and finally placing the body in the crib. Chen Yan's team searched the entire route from the west exit all the way to the top of the mountain, knocking on a few residential doors along the way. Since the murder occurred in the dead of night, no one had noticed a thing. Just as Chen Yan was at a loss, an officer called in over the radio. Deputy Captain Chen, we found a clue under a tree halfway up the mountain. Rushing over, Chen Yan discovered bloodstains at the base of a towering, ancient tree. He immediately called for forensics. A luminol test confirmed it was human blood. Digging about half a meter into the soil, Chen Yan and 2 officers unearthed a blood-soaked piece of clothing wrapped around the murder weapon. It was a brand-new, razor-sharp blade, exactly as Xiao Lu had predicted, identical to a serrated steak knife from a restaurant. Chen Yan radioed the captain, confirming the items would be sent to the trace evidence lab for testing before heading back to the precinct himself. By the time Chen Yan arrived at the station, Lin Feng was already in the autopsy suite. After a few moments of mental debate, Chen Yan decided to wait in the office. Downstairs, a grim-faced Lin Feng watched Xiao Lu examine the heart. She went over the organ meticulously. It was unnaturally enlarged, with uneven blood distribution, yet visually there was no fatal trauma to the heart itself. Sending the detailed report to Lin Feng's device, she turned to him. Based on my analysis, the victim was likely scared to death. Scared to death? Lin Feng asked, taken aback. He had assumed the heart would show trauma, never anticipating this cause of death. Xiao Lu nodded. I am fairly certain. Think about it. When a person is subjected to extreme terror, the heart palpitates violently. Blood rushes to the heart, causing massive congestion. If he had pre-existing cardiovascular issues, it would trigger a cascade of severe reactions: chest tightness, shortness of breath, dizziness, and eventually shock. Lin Feng frowned. Aren't those typical symptoms of cerebral ischemia? Exactly, she confirmed. Extreme fright severely impacts the nervous system, leading to what we call cranial nerve damage. Both the heart and brain are deprived of blood, and the consequences are catastrophic. Furthermore, I suspect he was subjected to prolonged psychological torment before this happened. A normal scare, even with these symptoms, usually subsides with rest. Lin Feng could almost picture the agonizing, inhumane torment the victim endured from the moment he encountered the killer until his death. While the public might feel no pity for Yang Sheng, to a detective, the killer's sheer brutality was glaringly evident. Lin Feng clenched his fists. A predator like this was a menace to society. It might seem the killer was only targeting those who deserved to die, but having solved thousands of cases, Lin Feng knew how this story ended. The ultimate conclusion of such bloodlust was always the slaughter of the innocent. Thank you. I will head up now, Lin Feng said. Leaving pathology, he went to the trace evidence department, where he found Chief Yang Shu frowning, her delicate features set in deep concentration. Running into trouble? Lin Feng asked, approaching her. The surrounding officers, not assigned to the case, smiled, eager for gossip. Yang Shu's face flushed slightly as she shook her head. Nothing major. I just feel this killer is incredibly sadistic. Looking at Yang Shu, one would never guess she worked in trace evidence, let alone as one of the best in the field. Soft-spoken and refined, she lacked the tough, overbearing demeanor often associated with female cops, resembling instead a gentle, mild-mannered girl next door. There's a massive amount of live cellular tissue on the victim's clothing, Yang Shu explained. The killer must have performed the extraction the exact moment the victim died. We call this incomplete death. The person has expired, but blood flow and body heat have not fully ceased. Doing this at that exact moment, you can't tell me the victim had absolutely no reaction. The level of cruelty is staggering. She continued, additionally, there's a large amount of fecal matter on his pants. He lost control of his bowels more than once before dying. Cross-referencing with the pathology report, we believe the blood on his pants came from his own fingers. He clawed at the ground in agony and then grabbed his own clothing. We should be able to recover the victim's fingerprints and DNA from those spots. Everything Yang Shu detailed painted a picture of a remorseless, sadistic killer who actively enjoyed inflicting pain. Regardless of the victim's identity, this lunatic would inevitably strike again. Lin Feng patted her shoulder, his voice low and firm. I will catch him quickly. Taking the report, he walked out. Yang Shu lowered her head with a shy smile, realizing the others were watching her with amusement, and quickly retreated to her office. Lin Feng strode back to his office, where Chen Yan and the others were eagerly waiting. Everyone got the reports. Chen Yan had already distributed them. Every face in the room was solemn. Chen Yan, do we have results on the victim's background and social connections yet? Chen Yan nodded, placing a dossier in front of Lin Feng. We did not just look into his daily contacts. We also found something interesting on a few social media platforms. Lin Feng nodded in satisfaction. Based on the ME and forensics reports, the killer's level of hatred toward the victim is far from normal. Chen Yan, take a team and dig deep into the victim's social circle. See if he made any enemies. Chen Yan nodded and was about to dispatch his team when the phone behind him rang. He answered it, his eyes widening in shock before turning to Lin Feng. Instantly alert. Lin Feng gave him a hard look. Hanging up, Chen Yan said, Boss, they found a female body at the Hexi warehouse. Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. One case was barely underway, and now another had dropped. A dark premonition shot up his spine. He waved his hand, and the entire team rushed out the door, bumping into Xiaolu and Yang Shu on their way out. 4 police cruisers sped toward the scene. Arriving at the Hexi warehouse, they found the police tape surrounded by gawkers. Though not completely isolated, the warehouse district rarely saw this much foot traffic. What is with the crowd? Lin Feng shouted to a patrol officer. Today is inventory day at the facility, the officer replied hurriedly. These are all tenants renting storage units. The person who called it in was a warehouse manager who had discovered the body while opening a unit for a client. Following the officer's pointing finger, Lin Feng saw a man in his 50s being questioned by police. Deep inside the storage unit lay the victim, face up, limbs splayed out, the concrete floor entirely painted in fresh blood. Bizarrely, the victim was wrapped extensively in white cloth. The killer seemed to have gone to great lengths to bind her from head to toe, as if terrified she might be seen. Frowning, Xiaolu stepped forward, peeling back layer after layer of the white fabric. Yangshu squatted down, her face pale, and accepted the cloth Xiaolu handed her. It is a single, continuous piece, about 3.5 meters long. Cotton, Yangshu observed. This is standard tailoring fabric, available at any textile market. There is not much blood on it, meaning she was likely wrapped after death. Lin Feng nodded. Without another word, Yangshu resumed scanning the scene for clues. When the body was finally laid bare, everyone drew a sharp breath. This killer is out of his damn mind, Chen Yan blurted out. In Lin Feng's eyes, a furious fire ignited. Meticulously examining the body, Xiao Lu stated, the victim sustained a blunt force trauma to the head. The carotid artery, subclavian artery, radial artery, and ulnar artery were all severed. The killer likely knocked her unconscious first, then bled her out until she died. The officers looked on in sorrow at the woman who had been drained of her blood while still alive. The methodology was infuriating, but the detail that truly made it an affront to heaven and earth lay on the lower half of her body. Her pelvic region had been stitched shut using crude, highly unprofessional methods. Crooked, chaotic sutures ran all the way down to her lower back. As Xiao Lu examined the stitches, Lin Feng could clearly see a flash of deep indignation in the medical examiner's eyes. Then came the most shocking revelation. Xiao Lu stood up, took a deep breath, and delivered her assessment. Her genital region was sutured shut before she died. Along the stitch lines, there are abrasions indicating she struggled and resisted. I suspect the killer began sewing her up before finally knocking her unconscious. Good God, this bastard has completely lost it, Chen Yan swore. Glancing at the other officers, Xiao Lu lowered her voice and said to Lin Feng, looking at the MO, I suspect we are dealing with the same perpetrator. Just as she finished speaking, Yang Shu made a discovery. Lin Feng, come look at this. He hurried over. In Yang Shu's gloved hand was a piece of paper. Written on it were 2 words, faithfulness. Touching the paper, Yang Shu's expression darkened. It is likely the exact same type of paper. Lin Feng looked back as the body was being loaded away, his mind racing. Was the killer taunting them, employing ruthless methods and theatrical tableaus? The murderer was methodically executing a grand design. Chen Yan, ID the female victim immediately. Find out if she has been involved in any recent disputes. Dig deep, Lin Feng ordered. Chen Yan nodded. The homicide division was severely understaffed. Lin Feng and Chen Yan were carrying the bulk of the investigative weight. If not for the meticulous Yang Shu and the fearless Xiao Lu, they would be drowning. Returning to the precinct, Lin Feng's first stop was the chief's office. The chief looked stressed the moment he walked in. I know this case is a nightmare, but you need to break it fast. Lin Feng grimaced, replying in frustration. We know we need to close it, Chief, but we are desperately short-handed. Investigating takes time and manpower. Chen Yan and I are dragging around rookies with 0 experience. The progress is crawling. The chief chuckled, patting his shoulder. Go on, get out of here. I have already transferred someone to help you. He is waiting in your office. Noting the chief's cryptic smile, Lin Feng sensed things were not that simple. Sure enough, pushing open his office door, an icy aura hit Lin Feng, making him shudder. Su Fan, the one man he least wanted to work with, yet desperately needed right now. He had not expected the renowned criminal psychologist Su Fan to be drafted for this. The brass clearly had their own agenda. Seeing Lin Feng, Su Fan smiled. Ah, finally nice to see you. That was Lin Feng's line. Su Fan was a legendary detective in his own district, not just a brilliant psychological profiler, but a top-tier marksman in peak physical condition and highly skilled in hand-to-hand combat. Before Lin Feng could speak, Su Fan continued, I have reviewed all the available case files. I believe the killer is incredibly arrogant and operates under a very specific, self-righteous judicial code. Lin Feng nodded. Yeah, I caught that too. The second victim's lower extremities were sutured, and the note left behind read faithfulness. It highly suggests a connection to her romantic or marital life. Chen Yan is pulling her background now. We should have answers soon. A glint of approval flashed in Su Fan's eyes. We need to find out if there is an intersecting link between the two victims. Lin Feng pulled a printed dossier from his desk. When we were running Yang Sheng's social connections, we stumbled onto this online. Take a look. Su Fan opened the folder to find screenshots of online forums. A gruesome double murder had already spread like wildfire across short video platforms, generating a chaotic spectrum of comments. Some blamed the victim, some cheered the killer, while others expressed pity. Lin Feng pointed to a specific comment. This reply caught my eye. I think it is our breakthrough. During neighborhood canvassing, interviews with former co-workers, and talks with the mahjong parlor owner, the police had received nearly identical accounts. Yang Sheng was a gambling addict. While others played for fun, he sat at the tables all day. When he ran out of money, he borrowed. When he could not pay, he ran to his mother. Former colleagues noted he was antisocial, avoiding company dinners and team-building events. He spent most of his time at mahjong parlors near work and home. Fellow gamblers loved playing with him. He was quiet, had endless free time, played poorly, and always seemed to have cash. Everyone knew where the money came from, but for the sake of business, it was an unspoken rule to ignore it. The most infuriating details came from his neighbors. Yang Sheng and his mother had moved into the building 8 years ago. From the start, neighbors frequently heard him verbally and physically abusing her. At times, intervening neighbors were told by the mother to mind their own business, insisting her son was not bullying her. Eventually, deciding she was reaping what she sowed, the neighbors stopped caring. When he got off work, he would scrounge up leftovers for her. The old woman never complained. Neighborhood committee warnings proved useless. Yet no one could have imagined he would let her rot to death in her own home. After listening to Lin Feng's summary, Su Fan frowned, deep in thought, before speaking. Behaviors like this are usually forged in childhood. We say that if a child grows up in a warm, loving environment, barring extremes spoiling their personality tends to lean toward empathy. Even if they do not fully understand their parents' hardships, they recognize human warmth. Conversely, if their childhood was severely oppressive, stemming from a broken home or abuse, the resulting personality often manifests as a complete lack of humanity. Lin Feng sighed softly. So you think Yang Sheng's treatment of his mother stems from his early home environment? Su Fan nodded. Exactly. I have always believed there is no unprovoked love in this world, and certainly no unprovoked hatred, especially among blood relatives. That level of resentment takes a very long time to accumulate. Using this background as a foundation, the two detectives decided to investigate Yang Sheng's past. Su Fan believed that to find the commonality between the victims, they had to start with their childhoods. Lin Feng held up the printout. A clout-chasing influencer had summarized Yang Sheng's case, and one specific user reply had caught Lin Feng's attention. Hard to believe. This guy was my 10th grade classmate. Dropped out after a year. Back then he scored first place in the entrance exams. In the subsequent replies, many doubted the user's claim, but the user had named the school Fengno One High School. It was a prestigious National Key high school. Getting in was difficult enough. Being the top scorer was phenomenal. A tragedy, really. Lin Feng sighed. Su Fan nodded. In other words, his descent likely began the moment he dropped out. Agreeing on this theory, they immediately drove to the high school mentioned in the comment. Chen Yan had already forwarded the commenter's identity to Lin Feng. Su Fan noted the former classmate lived nearby, but suggested they hit the school first. Large institutions usually maintained extensive archives. A top-ranking incoming student like Yang Sheng would certainly have a file. Arriving 20 minutes later, they stated their purpose and were personally received by Principal Lin Shuhua, a woman in her early 50s, with graying hair. Principal Lin's eyes filled with sorrow at the mention of Yang Sheng. Yang Sheng. I actually ran into him a few years ago. I never thought he would end up like this. You remember him? Lin Feng and Su Fan exchanged pleasantly surprised glances. Principal Lin nodded. Of course. He entered our school as the provincial valedictorian for the high school entrance exams. I was his homeroom teacher. The former dean of academic affairs and I personally visited his home to recruit him. That poor boy. Could you tell us more? Lin Feng pressed. Principal Lin led them to her office and poured them tea. Let me check. She rooted through a large cabinet behind her, pulling out several thick manila folders. Because of the news, I remembered him and dug out these old files to organize. I did not expect you detectives to show up. Despite the photo having yellowed, Su Fan immediately spotted Yang Sheng standing in the back row behind his teacher. Pointing to the picture, Principal Lin said he was a bit introverted, but his grades were phenomenal, especially in STEM. His math and physics were extraordinary. He competed in numerous tournaments in middle school. Having him enroll here was a point of immense pride for us. After all, it is not every year you recruit a student with that kind of potential. Lin Feng and Su Fan understood perfectly. A student guaranteed to hit top-tier universities like Tsinghua or Peking University was a massive boost to a high school's reputation and enrollment metrics. It is a tragedy he dropped out in 10th grade. The most promising student we had, never to return. Didn't the school investigate or try to stop him from dropping out? Our staff, including the former principal, practically begged his parents. Principal Lin sighed helplessly, but they did not care about his future. They just wanted him to make money immediately and take on the financial burden. Lin Feng stared at her in disbelief. His parents actually said that. Yang Sheng had a hard life. She nodded. His biological father died of illness when he was young. His mother took him and remarried, and they both relied on this new man to survive. Perhaps because he was viewed as a freeloader, we noticed shortly after the semester began that Yang Sheng was constantly covered in injuries. He frequently had massive bruises, especially on his neck and arms. Hearing this, Lin Feng glanced at Su Fan. Su Fan's analysis was spot on. The public only saw what Yang Sheng did, ignorant of what he had endured. His broken family dynamic had triggered the entire tragic chain of events. What happened after that? Did you ever see him again? Principal Lin shook her head. I saw him again maybe 2 years ago. My grandchild wanted a pastry from the old West Street, and I spotted him while I was buying it. He did not recognize me, but I knew him instantly. I never imagined he had fallen so far dressed in rags being chased down the street for money. She shook her head sadly. Lin Feng asked, Do you know if he had any close friends in school? She thought for a moment, pointing to another boy in the photo. They went to the same middle school. They might have been closer. Securing the former classmate's address from the alumni records, the detectives thanked her. 30 years had passed. Things had changed, and people had faded away. Leaving their contact information, they departed the school. Meanwhile, after digging into the female victim's background, Chen Yan called Lin Feng. The victim is Yan Li, 43 years old. Her husband is 50. They have a 20-year-old daughter studying abroad. Financially, they seemed comfortable. Anything stand out? Su Fan asked over the speaker. Surprised by the unfamiliar voice, Chen Yan asked, Boss, is that the legendary Su Fan with you? Realizing his team had just gained a top-tier profiler, Chen Yan's confidence surged. With you two legends on the case, this will be a breeze. Lin Feng smiled wryly, steering him back on track. Cut the chatter. Give me the breakdown on Yan Li. Snapping to attention, Chen Yan reported. Based on our inquiries into her family life, her relationship with her husband was highly volatile, and she had severe tension with her mother-in-law. Lin Feng and Su Fan listened quietly. The mother-in-law claimed Yan Li was an ungrateful woman who lived a pampered life. She said Yan Li did not work, did not have to look after her daughter since she was abroad, and spent her days chasing new thrills which ultimately corrupted her. Sensing this was the crux of the matter, Lin Feng glanced at Su Fan. Did she have affairs? Su Fan asked. Chen Yan's tone filled with awe. How did you know? Yeah, word is, she had a long-term lover. Most of the neighbors knew they used dancing and card games as a cover to secretly hook up. Some even saw them getting hotel rooms. Her in-laws labeled her a nymphomaniac, claiming her husband treated her well, but she still went out and cheated. Exactly as they had predicted, the killer targeted those who were morally and legally condemnable. But keeping Yang Sheng's true backstory in mind, Lin Feng and Su Fan refused to jump to conclusions. Doing so would make them no different from the killer. The killer occupies a self-appointed moral high ground, Su Fan hypothesized. He uses his own moral framework. What he sees and believes is right to pass judgment. He decides they deserve to die, and meticulously crafts a death tableau tailored to each of them. On the surface, he presents as someone overflowing with righteous indignation, traditional, perhaps highly stubborn, highly disciplined, and methodical. As Su Fan spoke, a clear psychological profile formed in Lin Feng's mind. But there are hundreds of thousands of people in this city who fit that description. Finding him won't be easy. Pointing at the business card Principal Lin had provided, Su Fan said, "Let us check this lead first." Lin Feng agreed, instructing Chen Yan over the phone to dig deeper into Yan Li's life. "We can't just restrict our inquiries to her current neighborhood." Chen Yan acknowledged and hung up. Yan Li's hometown was roughly 50 kilometers away from her marital home. It was not incredibly far, but the distance meant she rarely visited, save for the holidays. Hearing of her murder, Yan Li's parents broke down in tears, the elderly couple supporting each other as their daughter-in-law tried to comfort them. Chen Yan hated these scenes. Standing awkwardly, he offered gentle condolences. "Please, try not to grieve too much. We will bring the person who did this to justice." Unexpectedly, Yan Li's mother lost control and screamed. It was that wicked husband of hers. If it was not him, who else could it be? Our Lili was such a good daughter, and he nearly beat her to death several times. That whole family is rotten to the core. Yan Li's father tried to calm her, but the mother would not back down. Why should not I say it? How did our Lili ever wrong them? We never asked them for a dime. That son-in-law never once visited us out of his own goodwill. When I was hospitalized, it was Lili running around taking care of everything. Whenever he got drunk, he used her as a punching bag. He is a useless piece of trash. None of them will meet a good end. Chen Yan was stunned by this explosive revelation. The husband's family had painted Yan Li as a promiscuous degenerate, completely downplaying their own cruelty. Sensing a massive cover-up, Chen Yan probed gently. "Madam, you said Yan Li's husband abused her. Do you know why?" Wiping her tears, the mother shook her head in despair. "Our Li was a good woman, filial, kind to everyone. We put her through high school. She did not go to college, just went straight to work. When she made 3,000 yuan a month, she sent 2,000 back to us, terrified we were starving ourselves to save money." The sister-in-law chimed in. "She was incredibly warm and generous. When I had my baby, she bought loads of groceries, worried my parents would not know what to cook, and came over personally to cook and help me with the baby. But that useless husband, if she did not work, he called her a leech. When she did work, she was a jewelry saleswoman making over 4,000 a month, and her clients loved her. He got jealous. He accused her of having affairs with clients and caused such massive scenes at the store that she was forced to quit. It was a classic case of an abuser who could not stand seeing his victim succeed, yet despised her when she was dependent. Clearly, Yan Li had been systematically oppressed by her in-laws for years. Nothing she did was ever right. Now that she was dead, they were washing their hands of her. "So, do you believe Yan Li had another man on the side?" Chen Yan asked cautiously, afraid of triggering more pain. "We have spoken to her acquaintances, and they all claim she had a lover." This time, the reaction defied his expectations. All three family members fell dead, silent, sensing the underlying complexity. Chen Yan did not push, waiting patiently. Finally, the father spoke up. "Even if we try to hide it, you police will find out." The mother grabbed his arm anxiously, but he continued. "It is all that bastard husband's fault. Right before Lili married him, the dowry was set at 30,000 yuan. His family had absolutely nothing. We even bought over 10,000 yuan in home appliances for her to take with her. But that greedy bastard started a massive fight with Lili over that 30,000. In the end, we just gave it back to him to take home. I strictly warned Lili once she got pregnant and had a child, expenses would skyrocket and she could not rely on that man." Chen Yan frowned. Yan Li's husband was truly the worst kind of abuser, wanting a wife without providing a dime. Was he just looking for a free maid? Tears rolling down his face, the father continued. Lily was a good girl. Soon after she married, she had a baby, raising the child entirely by herself. She was too proud to gossip with the neighbors, swallowing all her grievances. If she had not visited us with visible bruises, we would never have known. Yan Li's sacrifices had bought neither her husband's love nor her in-laws' respect. It only emboldened them. The money to send their daughter abroad was scraped together entirely by Yan Li. Over this, her husband had beaten her so severely he broke two of her ribs. Later on, the father sighed helplessly. A former client of hers took pity on her. He pursued her relentlessly and treated her very well, but that husband refused to get a divorce. He dragged it out, refusing to let her go. And now this happens. He broke down, sobbing again. Chen Yan immediately called the precinct to verify Yan Li's injuries. Xiao Lu, currently performing the autopsy, called him back. Stepping outside the house, Chen Yan looked at the golden grain drying in the courtyard. The three-story self-built house was well-furnished and comfortable. It broke his heart. Had Yan Li never married, she would have lived a far better life here. Xiao Lu, did Yan Li have old injuries? Yes, Xiao Lu confirmed. Her ribs had been fractured in the past. The bones healed improperly and were misaligned. Given the state of her ribs, she must have been in severe chronic pain for a very long time. Anything else were you able to check? Chen Yan asked. Xiao Lu fell silent for a moment before letting out a soft sigh. There are burn marks on her back, inner thighs and legs. When burns are not properly treated, they scar, and the surrounding skin turns yellowish black. These burns were entirely in places normally hidden by clothing. Chen Yan clenched his fists, looking back at the devastated elderly couple inside. He wanted nothing more than to drag Yan Li's husband into an interrogation room and tear him apart. Thank you, Xiao Lu. Send me the report. Hanging up, Chen Yan walked back to the parents, squatting down to look them in the eye. I promise you, for all the suffering Yan Li endured, we will get justice for her. Over the phone, Chen Yan relayed everything to Lin Feng and Su Fan, corroborating the parents' story with the autopsy findings. Yan Li's affair was real, but the circumstances were far more tragic. Chen Yan was currently en route to verify the affair with the lover, after which he would bring the husband in for questioning. Despite the physical evidence proving this was a serial killer, Lin Feng felt they could not ignore any details. Was there an accomplice? Was someone inciting the murders? Was it a copycat? Given how Yan Li's husband treated her, it would not be shocking if his abuse had escalated to murder. After Chen Yan hung up, Lin Feng and Su Fan sat in silence. This case is bizarre, Lin Feng muttered. Su Fan nodded, his mind racing. The killer only saw the surface, blind to the underlying truths. And if they did not catch him soon, more innocent people would die. The biggest mystery was how the killer accurately targeted these specific victims. Domestic abuse, affairs, elder abuse, unless one was a close neighbor. These were just local rumors. How could the killer be so absolutely certain they were guilty? Or rather, did the killer even care about the truth, acting simply on what he heard? If so, how many more were on his list? The killer might be closer to us than we think, Su Fan noted. Lin Feng glanced at him as they pulled into a residential complex, flashing his badge at the gate. As they walked, Lin Feng voiced his doubts. These two victims lived in the same district, but they were not close to each other. We are talking a 20-kilometer gap. The killer could not just stumble upon Yang Sheng, learn his secrets, and then coincidentally bump into Yan Li and learn hers. If that is the case, the killer must be someone who knew both of them simultaneously. There is no such thing as a coincidence like that. Arriving at the apartment mentioned in the online comment, they headed to Unit 901. Music blared from inside. A man opened the door, looking bewildered at the two strangers. Who are you looking for? Flashing their badges, Lin Feng asked, Are you Chinmu? He nodded, ushering them inside and pouring water. Once he learned why they were there, Chinmu's face fell. He already knew about Yang Sheng's gruesome death. You and Yang Sheng were close in school, Lin Feng began. Chinmu nodded. Yang Sheng was not like the rest of us. He was not just smart, he was fighting a headwind. Before Lin Feng could probe, Qin Mu continued. We were in the same class all 3 years of middle school. He was always number one. We absolutely idolized him, but his family situation was not great. What do you know about his family? Well, he did not like getting close to people, but we were desk mates, and we lived nearby. Whenever he did not want to be home, he would hide out at my place. His favorite was my mom's flour soup. Seeing Qin Mu steeped in nostalgia, the detectives realized he was likely Yang Sheng's only true friend. Su Fan asked softly, "Can you tell us about his family?" "A lot of people online are saying he abused his sick mother," Qin Mu said defensively. "To be brutally honest, I completely understand why he did it. It is not shocking at all, considering how he was raised. I wanted to post the truth online to fight back against the mob, but one voice does not do much. I would just get accused of whitewashing a monster. I figured the truth stands on its own. I believe Yang Sheng's spirit knows the truth." Sensing a deeply tragic backstory, the detectives urged him on. Qin Mu slowly explained that Yang Sheng had always hated his mother. Ever since he was 6 years old, he harbored a deep resentment toward her. Yang Sheng's biological father had treated him wonderfully. A long-haul truck driver, he always brought back regional snacks and toys. They were a happy family. But when his father was diagnosed with terminal cancer, everything collapsed. When Yang Sheng was 6, his mother, unable to bear the burden of caring for a dying husband and working to pay off debts, abandoned the father, forcing Yang Sheng to come with her. He had begged to stay and care for his dad, but she dragged him away. When his father eventually died, the mother did not even attend the funeral. She kept it a secret from Yang Sheng for a full year. When he found out at age 8, they had a massive blowout. Yang Sheng told Qin Mu he had wanted to tell someone, but once people knew about his broken family, no one wanted anything to do with him. "So that is why he hated her," Lin Feng murmured. To Yang Sheng, his father was the only one who truly loved him. Qin Mu shook his head. No, if it was just that, Yang Sheng would not have treated her the way he did. The real nightmare started after she officially remarried. Su Fan narrowed his eyes. The men she dated mostly rejected Yang Sheng. Finally, she married this guy, thinking life would improve. But the guy was a violent, sadistic monster. Yang Sheng became his stepfather's punching bag. His mother, just grateful to have a roof over her head and health insurance provided by this man, completely ignored it. She let him beat, kick, and torture Yang Sheng. Even when the police showed up, she defended the stepfather. It left Yang Sheng with massive psychological trauma. "Do you know why he dropped out?" Lin Feng asked. Qin Mu nodded, his expression turning bitter. Yang Sheng had brilliant grades, but the further you go in education, the more money it costs. His stepfather refused to pay for his tuition, beating him daily, calling him a leech and a bad investment, and forcing him to drop out in 10th grade to work. After the stepfather eventually died of illness, the mother collected some compensation and moved with Yang Sheng to their current apartment. Broken by his traumatic youth, Yang Sheng spiraled, doing odd jobs but mostly drifting. His hatred for his mother only deepened. "Have you seen him recently?" Lin Feng asked. "Yeah, last month. A relative of mine opened a mahjong parlor near Yang Sheng's place. My mom asked me to drop off some snacks, and I ran into him playing cards. He had changed so much, I barely recognized him. We just exchanged a quick greeting. Coincidentally, some guy came in right then to catch his cheating wife, causing a massive scene, so I bolted." Lin Feng realized they were running out of time. They stood up to leave. Heading downstairs, Lin Feng suddenly stopped. "We missed a detail." Su Fan looked at him. "Actually, Yan Li and Yang Sheng share a hobby, mahjong. It is the national pastime. Even if they lived far apart, is not it possible they crossed paths at a mahjong parlor? We can check the parlors in the area. Because of the pandemic, many have closed, making the search easier." It turned out they did not have to look hard. They went straight to the parlor Qin Mu mentioned. To their surprise, the owner recognized Yan Li immediately. "Oh man, thank God, I have security cameras or I would never be able to clear my name. I run a legitimate business." The owner pulled up last month's footage. The man who had come in to catch his cheating wife was none other than Yan Li's husband. "Can you believe this?" the owner complained. The guy brings his mistress here to play, and her husband tracks her down. He wrecked the place, claiming I run a brothel. The cops even came to investigate. Sufan, look who this is. Lin Feng pointed at the screen. The clever owner paused the video. There, standing in the frame, were Yang Sheng and Qin Mu. Qin Mu soon left the frame, but Yang Sheng stood there, watching the drama unfold. Do you know him? Sufan asked. Of course, the owner said. He plays with the locals all the time. Sometimes he rents a private room for the whole day. Did he ever interact with that woman? Lin Feng pointed to Yan Li. The owner shook his head. No, that was her first time here, and she never came back after that. Leaving the parlor, Lin Feng immediately called Chen Yan, ordering him to bring Yan Li's husband in. The line was staticky, with shouting in the background. Boss, I am at the local precinct, not HQ. I just got to Yan Li's house, and the local cops were already there. Yan Li's daughter came home, called the police, and is demanding her father be arrested for murder. They are screaming at each other at the station right now. Lin Feng exchanged a look with Sufan. We found a few leads. We are heading there now. Keep them separated. I need to talk to the daughter. Yan Li's daughter, a 20-year-old college student studying abroad, usually polite and refined, was currently screaming like a banshee, pointing squarely at her father. Officers, it is him. He killed my mother. He is a violent psychopath. Arrest him. Interrogate him. He will confess. Lin Feng and Su Fan arrived to the chaos. Despite officers trying to calm her, the girl sobbed hysterically, her throat hoarse, looking ready to tear her father apart, displaying his badge to the local precinct captain. Lin Feng got a quick rundown. These two families are always at it. The captain sighed. Used to get domestic violence calls every few weeks. Finally had some peace. And now this. With permission, Lin Feng and Sufan brought Chen Qian, the husband, into an interrogation room, while Chen Yan interviewed the daughter outside. Chen Qian was a former decorator who now did odd jobs for older contractors. Compared to Yan Li, he was useless, broke, and arrogant. Facing the detectives, he showed no fear, retorting aggressively, "Officers, you should be arresting her. Look at her face, that ungrateful wretch. I fed her and housed her." Lin Feng sneered. "Have you been chronically abusing Yan Li?" Chen Qian went pale, momentarily speechless before stammering. Women do not listen unless you hit them, right? She was out whoring around. How else was I supposed to fix her?" Lin Feng was enraged by the man's sense of entitlement. "Is that so? You started beating her the moment she married you. We went to her hometown. We spoke to her co-workers. We have your daughter's statement, and we have the forensics report. Her ribs were broken, and she had cigarette burns all over her body. Stop lying." Terrified by Lin Feng's outburst, Chen Qian stuttered. "She married me to take care of my parents, to serve us. She was unchaste. She deserved it. She deserved to be hit. She fought back. So you killed her, did not you?" Lin Feng roared. "What? No, I did not kill her. She brought this on herself with her cheating. Go find her lover. I did not kill anyone." "Where were you the night she died?" I was at home. The downstairs neighbors can prove it. We fought. She said she was going back to her parents and stormed out. I was furious. I went downstairs and complained to the neighbors. I never left after that. This is footage of you causing a scene at the mahjong parlor. Lin Feng shoved a photo forward. Do you recognize this man in the background? He is our first murder victim. He was there that day. Explain that. Explain what? I do not know him. I am not crazy. I do not just go around killing people. Officer, you have to investigate this properly. I did not kill her. Chen Qian broke down in tears. Su Fan frowned, shaking his head at Lin Feng. They had hit a dead end with him. Leaving the interrogation room, they found Chen Yan with the daughter. Seeing them, she jumped up. Did he do it? Lock him up. Avenge my mother. Su Fan patted her shoulder, his voice gentle but profound. I do not think it was your father. He treated your mother that way because of his own deep-seated insecurities and a pathological fear of being taken advantage of. Your mother also made some choices that humiliated him. I think you need to have a serious talk with your father, lest you repeat your mother's tragedy. Hearing Su Fan's words, the girl wiped her tears. Ultimately, a daughter is different from a wife. Blood ties could not be easily severed. She nodded, sitting back down, crying softly. Go home with your father, Lin Feng told her gently. Focus on your mother's funeral. We will catch the real killer. As the three detectives waited for the paperwork to process, Chen Yan stepped outside for a smoke. Lin Feng and Su Fan followed for some fresh air. Watching Chen Chen and his daughter leave, Chen Yan sighed. Dead end, again. No leads. The only thing the two victims had in common was playing mahjong. How do we even track this? Su Fan was also frowning, struggling to figure out how the killer knew their specific secrets. Just then, two female officers walked past, carrying files. Think we should hire a priest, one joked. You think the Grim Reaper is just camping out here? Otherwise, why are people dying so fast? The casual remark hit Lin Feng like a lightning bolt. He spun around, but the women had already entered the building. He sprinted after them, leaving Chen Yan and Su Fan bewildered. Wait in the car, Lin Feng yelled back. Knowing Lin Feng, Chen Yan immediately complied. Su Fan did not ask questions. He knew Lin Feng had found something. Rushing back into the precinct, Lin Feng asked the captain for a complete roster of all active personnel, the duty logs, and detailed reports of every person who had filed a complaint in the last month. Jumping into the car, Lin Feng slammed the files down and sped off. Only when they hit the highway did he speak. We have been looking at this backwards. We assumed the killer went to places where Yang Sheng and Yan Li hung out and overheard their secrets. But even with coincidences, no one just happens to stumble onto exactly those two specific stories. Su Fan caught on instantly. So you are saying the killer was in a single location where both of their stories were forcibly revealed? Where did we just walk out of the police station? Chen Yan's jaw practically hit the floor. You suspect a cop did this? Lin Feng did not answer directly. I overheard those two officers talking. It turns out the abuse complaint against Yang Sheng was handled by that exact precinct. Reporters cornered him right at the entrance, screaming at him about starving his mother. And Yan Li, she was dragged in there over a domestic dispute, screaming at her husband, who was yelling about her being a cheating whore. The one thing they share is that they were both publicly investigated at that specific precinct. Everyone working there knew their stories. The suspect pool had shrunk dramatically. There were only about 30 employees at the station. Returning to HQ, the trio spread the duty logs across the table. They cross-referenced personnel rosters against the dates. Yang Sheng and Yan Li were brought in. For 3 agonizing hours, they scoured the records, eyes burning, chain smoking, terrified the killer would strike again while they searched. At 9:10 p.m., Lin Feng suddenly called them over. Look at this. He had circled several specific dates. This guy was on shift the days Yang Sheng and Yan Li were brought in. He pointed to a name, Zheng Wei, 45, a security guard who had worked at the precinct for 5 years. Boss, there is only a few guards. It is totally normal for him to be present. Both times if he works the day shift, Chen Yan pointed out. Lin Feng smiled grimly, tapping the schedule. Look at the dates of the murders. He was scheduled to work, but someone else signed the duty log. He requested time off or swapped shifts on the exact nights of the murders. You think that is a coincidence? Lin Feng rapidly flipped through the incident logs. In the month following Yang Sheng and Yan Li's visits, there were several other reports, 3 frauds, 2 subway thefts, and 2 that caught their eye. One was an allegation of a crippled old man, Yang Jianping from Baohe village, sexually assaulting an 11-year-old girl. He was held for 3 days and released due to lack of evidence. The other involved a driver beaten for stealing pumpkins. The assault in Baohe village. If the killer is going to strike again, that is his target, Lin Feng declared. Chen Yan immediately drove to the local precinct. According to the schedule, Zheng Wei was supposed to be on shift tonight. As Lin Feng and Su Fan prepared to head to Yang Jianping's house, Xiaolu suddenly walked in, bumping directly into Su Fan. Blushing slightly, she handed Lin Feng a folder. Captain, I found some strange trace evidence on the female victim. Opening the file, Lin Feng frowned. Scratches on her upper arm. Su Fan leaned in. The report showed a minor curved abrasion on Yan Li's right bicep, previously obscured by massive amounts of blood. Inside the scratch were microscopic fabric fibers. Could it be from when the killer knocked her out and dragged her? Su Fan theorized. These fibers likely transferred during a struggle. Su Fan looked at Lin Feng, his eyes widening. I know what it is. Let us go. Sprinting to the car, Lin Feng called Chen Yan, ordering him to question the precinct captain about Zheng Wei's history. Meanwhile, Lin Feng sped toward Baohe village, 20 kilometers away. At the local precinct, Chen Yan learned a devastating truth. Zheng Wei swapped shifts today, the captain explained. He has been dealing with a lot at home. His wife had a miscarriage a few months ago, and her health has been terrible. Do you know why she miscarried? Chen Yan asked. Yeah. Right outside our gates, some people were having a violent brawl. They accidentally knocked her over. The court ordered them to pay compensation, but what good does money do? Chen Yan immediately called Lin Feng. Boss, Zheng Wei's wife lost their baby right in front of the station because of some brawlers. Su Fan's profile was perfectly validated. The killer had suffered a profound tragedy that shattered his psyche, twisting him into a vigilante. Get back up and meet us at Baohe village, Lin Feng ordered. As Lin Feng and Su Fan arrived at the village, a blood-curdling scream pierced the night air. Lights flicked on in the surrounding houses. The village roads were uneven and tough to navigate, but the two detectives sprinted toward the sound. A woman burst out of a courtyard, screaming murder. He is trying to kill him. Pushing her aside to safety, Lin Feng and Su Fan drew their weapons and charged in. Zheng Wei stood over Yang Jianping, raising a massive blade, preparing to plunge it into the old man's throat. Without hesitation, Lin Feng leaped forward, grabbing the blade with his bare hands. Blood sprayed instantly. Yang Jianping shrieked in terror, losing control of his bladder, trembling violently. Lin Feng delivered a brutal kick to Zheng Wei's stomach, sending him crashing to the ground. Su Fan rushed in, pressing the muzzle of his gun to Zheng Wei's head. Zheng Wei, you are under arrest for 2 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder. Handcuffing him, Su Fan pulled him up. Zheng Wei glared at the terrified old man on the ground and spat. Scum, you deserve to die. Let us see you try your sick acts again. He puffed out his chest, looking at the 2 detectives with a sense of righteous pride, though the light in his eyes was slowly giving way to utter despair. Chen Yan arrived moments later, shocked to see Lin Feng bleeding profusely. After getting his hands stitched up at the hospital, Lin Feng refused to rest, marching straight into the interrogation room with Su Fan. Zheng Wei confessed to everything. The luminol tests on his uniform and shoes were positive, and the fibers pulled from Yan Li's arm were a 100% match to his security uniform. Why did you do it? Lin Feng asked. Because they deserve to die, Zheng Wei snarled. Who told them to come to the police station and cause chaos when they were in the wrong? Did they think it was their own living room? You do wrong. You pay the price. You pay with your life. Did they think throwing some money around makes it all go away? Su Fan realized the man was deeply mentally unhinged. He had transferred all the rage and injustice surrounding his wife's miscarriage onto any wrongdoer who crossed his path at the station. Even now he believed he was a hero. Slamming the victim's files on the table, Lin Feng glared at him. You worked at a police station for 5 years. Even if you are just a guard, you should know that no individual has the right to act as judge, jury, and executioner. The law does not let the guilty slip away. The law, Zheng Wei scoffed. Plenty of scum walk free. Can money bring back a life? Can money erase the trauma? If justice won't act, I will. What you did was not justice, Su Fan roared, standing up and leaning over the table. The people you killed. Yes, on the surface, they made mistakes, but you knew nothing about them. Yang Sheng was brutally abused by his mother and stepfather his entire childhood. His mother abandoned his dying father. Yang Sheng was systematically tortured and beaten by her husband for years, having her ribs broken while sacrificing everything for her family. You only saw the surface. You are not a harbinger of justice. You are just a bloodthirsty monster using them as an outlet for your own rage. Zheng Wei stared at the 2 detectives, completely stunned, unable to utter a single word. True justice is not merely about delayed retribution. It must be executed within the boundaries of a civilized society. Without the law, what separates the righteous from the monsters? The truth is rarely black and white. Behind a terrible husband or an allegedly promiscuous wife often lie the shattered fragments of an abusive childhood or a marriage drowned in silent agony. We must not rush to judge a life when we have not walked in their shoes. Vigilantism, masked as justice and fueled by personal trauma, is nothing more than the transfer of hatred. When we seize the moral high ground to strip away another's right to live, we cross a threshold becoming the very demons we claim to despise. The machinery of true justice may turn slowly, but it must operate within the framework of law and humanity. If we shatter that framework, society descends into chaos and bloodshed. This case leaves behind a haunting meditation on human nature and consequence, but it also illuminates the quiet courage of those who uphold the law. To be a detective, a forensic pathologist, or a criminal profiler is to walk a path devoid of roses. It demands gazing directly into the darkest, most decayed corners of the human soul. It means sleepless nights surrounded by the dead, forever walking the tightrope between life and death. Yet men and women like Lin Feng and Su Fan choose this path. They stand in the shadows to protect the light. They keep their hearts untainted by the evil they hunt, using their meticulous intellect, iron will, and unyielding resolve to decode the faintest traces of truth, restoring a voice to those who can no longer speak. For those driven to protect the weak and seek the truth, no matter how thorny the road, it is this relentless pursuit of light that defines the eternal value of the human spirit.